The content you are listening to is part of the Nerd Initiative Podcast Network. For more info about the home of pop culture positivity, check out nerdinitiative.com.
What is up, wrestling fans? It's that time of the week for these guys from Nerd Initiative to talk all things pro wrestling and call it right down the middle. That's right, it's time for this week's edition of Nerd Initiative Presents Wrestling Night Live. And we are live on YouTube, the Nerd Initiative Facebook, Twitch, X, Kick, wherever you get it, and make sure that you're staying live in the chat. But we had a special guest, so I want to jump right in introductions. First of all, the guy that sits to my right in studio, probably your left on on your TV screen, but he is the host of the Ocho Duro Parlay Hour podcast. He is the host of Turn a Page, the comic book showcase, every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on the Nerd Initiative YouTube channel. We'll be talking about that because we did an awesome interview over there this week as well.
Yes, we did.
And then on top of that, he is the editor-in-chief of the comic book division of Nerd Initiative. Ladies and gentlemen, I give to you Ken M.
Nerd Initiative Nation, I will try keeping a wrestling focus, but there is an amazing comic that we're going to be talking about tonight, so I will try not fanboying out too much. But if it sways that way, my apologies in advance because the book we're going to be discussing is a must-read.
The best part is I didn't even introduce myself. I'm the head of NI Wrestling and the host of NI Wrestling.
That's how amped up we
My
are.
name is Rich. Yeah, I'm so amped up. I'm so happy from Tuesday. It's carrying over to Thursday, and that's not a bad thing. And of course, last but not least, as far as the normal host here, he's the guy that sits in the third chair. When his spare time, he goes out there and he tries to catch them all. That's right. He's a Pokemon hunter, and he's also a pro wrestling lover. He is the new guy. It's just Nick.
I'm going to do my best to keep you guys reeled in. You're geeking out a little too hard right now.
Yeah, that happens sometimes. Well, why we're geeking out is because we have an awesome guest on the show this week. He is, speaking of comic books, let's just start with that. He is the co-creator of the Luchaverse Catalyst, coming out on July the 17th. Of course, FOC for that is June 20th, I do believe.
June 17th.
June 17th. 17th. See, I was 3 days off. So make sure you go out and rush out to do that right now. But more importantly than that, this man has spent over 20 years in the pro wrestling business, basically doing every job that you could possibly hold in the pro wrestling business and entertainment business in general. But he is currently the president and COO and executive producer of Masked Republic. Visit maskredrepublic.com. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the one and only Kevin Kleinrock.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And I saw that interview you guys did with Diego on Tuesday, and so very excited to be here. I thought that was such a great interview, and so I'm looking forward to spending some time with you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Just real quick, got to give a couple quick shout outs. Make sure you visit nerdinitiative.com, the home of pop culture positivity. That's what, the bosses would be mad if I don't plug that. And of course, make sure you, if you're watching us on X, Twitch, Kick, or Facebook, make sure you're following us there and go over and follow us even if you're not. And also make sure you go over to YouTube. And if you're already watching us on YouTube, you've already got your work cut out for you. It's easy enough. Make sure you smash the subscribe button, click the bell icon for notifications whenever we go live and whenever we put up videos. And last but certainly not least, click that thumbs up icon to let the bosses know you want more wrestling content on Nerd Initiative's YouTube channel. All right. So now that we've gotten the business out of the way, Kevin, first of all, let's start off. What is Masked Republic?
Well, Masked Republic, and I think we're finally in like our, 15th-ish year. People are starting to understand that we are not a Lucha Libre promotion. We do live events and we put on shows, but it's kind of hard to understand what we are sometimes because there's no other company like us. We are a multi-platform, multi-vertical company where everything is focused on the expansion of Lucha Libre beyond the borders of Mexico. And, that means we have a vertical that is the representation of luchadors themselves for their, what today I guess is called NIL, name, image, and likeness, but their IP essentially. We have a vertical that is putting on live events, whether it's our own promoted events or whether it's sold shows that we do at casinos or festivals. We're on the road this summer with Taco and Tequila festivals. We did 9 sellouts in a row at Agua Caliente Casino in Southern California. We also have a division that specializes in securing work visas for luchadors. I mean, if there's a luchador that you're watching on AEW, NWA, GCW, most of the indies in the US, that came through our coordination. And then we have now what is basically going to evolve into Master Republic Studios, which is our original IP and content from publishing like comic books and our great new deal with Massive to film and television. And other forms of transmedia, video games. So we've got a lot going on, but it is all Lucha Libre based. That is what we focus on, and really trying to expand lucha and lucha culture throughout the world.
Yeah, no, definitely. For anybody listening to this, make sure you go over to massrepublic.com. I was over at the website, of course, having to, going through stuff and the amount of stuff you can buy stuff. There's a store there. There's all sorts of stuff you're doing. But then, it also, you guys do a great job of updating everything that you guys have going on as far as, wrestlers who are going certain places, promoting their appearances, promoting what you're doing. I thought it was wonderful, and it's really cool to see. And I know I said on Tuesday, and I'll repeat it here, it is nice to see the lucha crossover coming to America as well, because, lucha is so loved in Mexico, and there, you have all the characters, and we made reference to it on Tuesday a couple times. Literally in a family, you could have the same, character just passed on from generation to generation. So you have generations of fans cheering for the same character realistically as it keeps going on and on. And here in the States, I think people miss out on what the heart of lucha is, because a lot of here, I think people think of it as like spot fest, or, like it's just acrobatics. There's no substance, there's no story. And that's going to be further from the truth. I think that there's a great story, and, we're going to talk about the comic here in a second, but it's got to be awesome for you guys to reach across cross platforms now, doing the comic book stuff, doing other multimedia stuff, because lucha, unlike any other, and mind you, I love wrestling across the board, but unlike American wrestling or even Japanese wrestling, lucha really translates really well to other forms of media. And it's got to be awesome now that you like you said, you've been doing this company for 15, 17 years, and now it's really taking off to a point where you guys are now moving into this like gigantic multimedia.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, Diego talked about his personal experience on Tuesday, but, for me, specifically when it comes to like the comic book side of things, I grew up a fan of comic books. I was reading G.I. Joe religiously. I was reading all the original X-Men. I was a teenager in the 90s where we were buying, polybag to save and polybag to open, the Deaths of Superman, the Births of Superman, the holographic foil, all the original Image comics, But Ruben...
my time.
Yep. Yeah, it was a great time. It was, other than having to buy multiple copies, but they got me hook, line, and sinker, but my business partner, Ruben, he did not read comic books. He did not grow up caring about Batman or Superman or the X-Men, but he grew up between Los Angeles and San Diego, and he would go to Lucha Libre at the Olympic Auditorium, and he'd go to Lucha Libre at the Auditorio de Tijuana, and literally to him, those luchadors were his superheroes. They had the mask, they had the capes, they were flying through the air, but he could actually reach out and touch them. And that is what he grew up seeing as a superhero. And so for us to be able to come together and take kind of, what I've wanted to do to take luchadors out of the ring and kind of really modernize what it was to do the Lucha Libre films of the 50s through the 70s, right? Like, what is the modern way to tell those out of the ring stories? And then to combine that with kind of, his desire to create these superheroes for a new generation of fans, from kids to adults. It's really been awesome to develop out the Luchaverse and everything else that's coming, both from the Luchaverse and outside the Luchaverse from Master Republic Comics. As we kind of work to build this over the next few years with Massive.
Awesome. Before we jump into the wrestling talk for the week, Ken, let's talk about your wheelhouse. What, Luchaverse.
Kevin just took me back to the 90s right there. I had to just have a moment because I felt his pain buying multiple copies, the amount of money for polybag stuff, chromane covers, hologram covers, pop-ups. Oh man, I could go back about this. But, having that fandom and especially seeing how, when Image came on the scene as an indie, and now you really taking a hold of a genre that has had a very rich history with comics. I mean, wrestling and has been around in comic books for so long now, but the take you're doing, I mean, how is the process about the pitch for this, and how did this all really get rolling?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I think, so first off, and I think it's important to understand that, like, we don't consider these wrestling comics. I think over the years, there's been WWE comics, there's been WCW comics, there's been other comics, and sometimes those were a mix of wrestling and non-wrestling. But to us, these aren't wrestling comics. These are comics of traditional comic genres: action, adventure, horror, sci-fi. But they just happen to be starring luchadors as the heroes or as the villains. And it really does, like I said, between harkening back to the Lucha Libre films and also, like this first issue, it has Rey Mysterio Jr. and Tenebris Jr. And after El Santo, Tenebris Sr. was the first luchador to have a comic series of their own in the 80s in Mexico. And so going back to what was mentioned earlier about passing down the generations of families, this is a great example of where not only was the mask passed down, and our comic series has nothing to do with the comic book series of the 1980s, where Tenebris was going on these, he was known as Captain Adventure, and going on these intergalactic quests. But it is kind of it's not rebooting the genre, but it's modernizing the genre. And for me, the journey started about 7 years ago now. I knew that I wanted to get us into the comic book space. I knew that I wanted to be able to have us tell stories in a medium where we could create these really vast and rich story worlds. But I also knew that I wasn't a writer and I wasn't an artist, and so I was going to have to team up. As you read earlier, like, my title within all of this is executive producer, and I really feel like I am the epitome of an executive producer. Not great at anything myself, but I can find the right people who are really good, and I have a vision, and I can bring it together. And so that's kind of, I guess it's also in a way like, with Marvel, you would have like an X-Men editor, right? And someone who was in charge of making sure that all those X-Men stories were being told right, and that they, it was being honest to the core of what the X-Men storytelling should be. So it's kind of similar to that as well. But so I had kind of a general overall vision for what I wanted the Luchaverse to be. I knew that I wanted it to be, based on the actual luchadors that we represented. I knew that I wanted each story to kind of have its own genre to it. Rey was going to be action adventure. Tenebris was going to be more horror. Solar and Super Astro, naturally, kind of a sci-fi intergalactic adventure. Conan is G.I. Joe meets X-Files, quasi Black Ops military conspiracy theory. And the Lucha Brothers is a martial arts fantasy. And so the idea was to kind of put all these different genres out there. The closest thing I guess I would compare it to is the original Marvel series on Netflix, right? You had like 5 different series, and they all had their own sense of style and vibe and kind of genre. And then they all came together in the Defenders. And so that's kind of really what we plan to do here. And so we worked with writers Ivan Plaza and Marco Lopez, and created the original kind of 5 stories that are now being released through Massive as the catalyst. Because the catalyst really is the catalyst. It is the jumping off point for where the Luchaverse is going to go. And so we've got 3 double issues coming out over the next 3 months, July, August, September. The first one being the Rey story and the Tenebris story. The second one is going to be the Solar and Super Astro and the Lucha Brothers. And then the third one is going to be the Conan story. And then a brand new chapter where Diego, who you talked with on Tuesday, brings them all together and sets us off in the direction that we're going to be going with the next arc going to come out after that. And then we're looking at probably telling stories in like 6-issue arcs, give or take, and really expanding on the universe, both forward and backward. And I think that's one of the things that really is going to differentiate this universe from a lot of the outside of the ring lucha libre storytelling that's been told before. Because we're not the first people to say, hey, let's kind of come up with a creative story about, luchadors outside the ring. But I think that in pretty much all other media that's been done, whether it's comics, whether it's movies or books, the history of the luchador goes back to the Aztecs and the Mayans. And that's, it's a very easy connection to make with the masks. But our universe actually completely in time expands on that. We go back to the dawn of humans or beings on Earth, and we actually will tell the story of why the Aztecs and Mayans wore masks and did things like that. And so it's just a much bigger story world than never been done before, and looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm also looking forward to it.
I'm super pumped up about this. Like I say, the take that you're doing is something that we haven't seen in the comics verse involving wrestling. Like we've seen a lot of adaptations, maybe a little bending of, the storylines per se, but this is something that's truly original in the sense that you're making the characters larger than life and giving them their own, superhero-esque worlds to come together. And the one thing I really love about it too is everybody has their own different style, like you alluded to. We have a horror book, we have an action book, we have, the X-Files-esque one too with G.I. Joe, which I'm completely, that's the one I'm really looking forward to the most as of right now. And like I say, it's so reader friendly too, because this is, a wide open playbook that you're basically saying, whatever you're a fan of, we have something for you, at least in one genre, if not all.
Yeah. And I think, while my goal was to cast a wide net and try to bring in as many people as possible, it's been crafted very meticulously. Our goal first and foremost is every book has got to be great. It's got to be a great writer. It's got to be a great artist. We are putting out quality comics that could stand alone next to any other comics out there. And that was really important to us. We did, it's very easy to dismiss wrestling comics as gimmicky, right? It's just trying to sell some, trying to put something at the merch stand, trying to do this, trying to do that, trying to, expand on WWE IP, but not, this is not speaking down to anybody that wrote any wrestling comics before. But I don't think the intent of those comics necessarily was to be a great comic in and of itself, right? Like they were there for other reasons. And
exactly,
we have prided ourselves, and I'll stand by any of these comics as being worthy of being on the comic shop shelves next to, what's being put out there by, the majors and by the other kind of big independents like Massive.
Man, I mean, I love that take for it too. Like I say, for what you're doing too, especially coming out, the indie scene right now is booming at comics, and it's just such a great time for a fan to go in and pick up something new. And for what you're seeing, I mean, this also kind of reminds me a little bit, like the era we're living in now does remind me a lot of the 90s too, like when Image came out and we had Valiant booming at that time too, and it really kind of kicked in the door for that. So let me kind of take it back to something you said earlier. What was your favorite book from the 90s?
Well, so I guess maybe we're even going back a little bit before the 90s, but the only book that I ever religiously followed was G.I. Joe. I mean, from a kid, I bought G.I. Joe. I think, I had the first 120 or so issues, and, the only series I ever really went and like shopped the long boxes and found and filled in the gaps. And I was so excited when I found my third printing of number 2, because that one was hard to come by. And but then as we kind of moved into the boom period, I was definitely a hardcore X-Men, all the X-Men, X-Force, all the X's. Again, I was in on all of the image, all the Spawn, the first run of Spawn, monthly collecting Spawn. I'm trying to remember. I didn't collect all the time, but like I remember like Punisher Warzone #1 just being blown away by that. First off, the cover was super badass because it had that die cut to it. I don't remember, like, it stuck with me throughout the years. But I just remember reading that story and going, I've never read another comic quite like this. that was one of my favorite single issues back then. But I think it was mostly like I bought all the death and births of Superman, but I just didn't really connect with me. I just think I was a Marvel kid growing up. I rarely read DC. And so even to this day, I think I've read more of like the great Batman runs later in life, like in the last 10 years, than I ever did, as a kid. It's probably, you tend to start with and read what those, whether it's an older sibling or a cousin. Like for me, my cousin was 4 years older than me, and so I would get his like hand-me-down comics, right, which was Marvel, mostly like Marvel stuff, and so I started following Marvel, and it was a great time to be a kid in that age and buying comics, and they were cheap.
Yeah. Oh, it's such a wild time. Like I say, it was just the booming of the indie scene, and you can kind of see how much that's reflected today in the wrestling scene too. Like the indies, I think, are at the strongest they've been at quite some time.
Oh, I definitely think that. I mean, somebody who spent a decade in the indies myself, doing stuff in the back, it's nice to see that and it's nice to see that now there's back to being a boom period. There was a time where it was hard to put people in a building. I mean, I always like to make the joke that I spent the time in like 2005 to 2015 when it was like the golden age of the indies, where it seemed like everywhere I went there was at least a few hundred people in attendance at any indie show, and then that kind of declined with when you only have one big dog in the house, which was WWE, and the business goes down. When that ship goes down a little bit, everybody goes down. Let's just be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as we see with that shift rising and with AEW rising, you tend to see everybody else rising with the waters as well. So it's always great to see. But speaking of which, before we jump into because kind of what we just talked about here was something I know Nick wanted to ask.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's switch the gears to before we talk about actually what's been going down this past week of wrestling. Nick, I believe you had a wrestling question you wanted to ask Kevin before we got started.
Yeah, Kev, so with your 20 plus years of experience in and around this industry, and with what you're doing now, we've seen this boom period over the past 5 years where AEW came onto the scene, WWE really turned their act around, and then the rise of the indies and even just the rise of like technology allowing these independent shows to really put out a really high quality production value product. So how do you feel about the state of wrestling now as in comparison to when you started, and how did you move through the years?
It's a great question. So this is actually my 30th year. I started when I was 16. Wow. And, when I started when I was 16 in like 93, 94, it was still a very closed business. And, there was like, I would purposely go and babysit the kids next door, not so much even to like make the $5 an hour or whatever, but it's because they had Prodigy. And I was able to get on Rec Sports Pro Wrestling, and I was able to like be involved in the the very first infancy wrestling online community. And just like you mentioned, I shake my head sometimes. Yeah, I feel like the old man yelling at clouds. I'm like, when promoters only rely on social media to get the word out about their events, it drives me freaking insane. Because to me still, especially in the Lucha Libre space, because a lot of what we do is try to appeal like Hispanic families who might not necessarily be watching Raw or watching AEW. So we still have to do the traditional flyering and postering. And even when independents, unless you're always selling out, like a GCW does not have to go and flyer at a WWE event. But
right.
I think that the technology of being able to use YouTube, use streaming your shows on Fight, use social media. It's such a great tool, and I love seeing people take advantage of it. It just annoys me when they ignore, all the other ways of promoting. But, any of us that grew up in the 90s watching wrestling, we had to tape trade or buy videotapes. I mean, I think there's the classics like the IWA Deathmatch tournament that everybody bought, but like that's how, or EC like. So when I broke in at a place called Slammers Wrestling Gym. And Ed Ferrara at the time was writing Weird Science and writing other TV shows. And just for fun, he was wrestling there on the weekends. And I actually used to get my very first ECW tapes from Ed. He'd get them, he'd watch them, and then he'd pass them off to me. And I'd be able to watch ECW because I didn't grow up with cable. So that also kind of sucked. I led a very nice childhood, but we did not have cable. And so I didn't get cable until I went off to college in 1996. And I was finally able to watch ECW, and I was finally able to watch Raw. And I was in college during that boom where, like, in my second year of college, I was watching Nitro and Raw, Monday Night Wars, picture in picture. I got a little off topic, but I think it's so great to see. I think, the biggest thing to me is that, and in the kind of the history of my career has been, there are so many great kind of subgenres of pro wrestling, and to be able to see this boom now of whether it's women's wrestling or lucha or hardcore or Japanese style wrestling or the super indie, where you have PWG and now you have GCW, and I just think that it's such a great time to be a fan. It's so great to have this easy access to all the content. From a business perspective, I always tell people it's much easier to get eyeballs on your content now. It's just not necessarily easier to monetize your content now. When I was back in the day when I was responsible for producing a lot of the early non-WWE VHS and DVDs that were available in stores, and we were selling tens of thousands of copies of DVDs and VHS tapes because we were the only really non-WCW WWE product out there. But that revenue stream doesn't exist these days, and so it's very easy to get your product out there. It's just harder to monetize it. But as a fan, it's great.
Yeah, I was going to say the two things that I'm going to touch on before we talk about actually NXT Battleground was that you said I also started in tape trading in the 90s. So like I live in New York. So we had 2:00 in the morning MSG, ECW. So I used to tape that, and then I would send that to people, and then they would send me Japanese wrestling. That's where I got all of
awesome.
Like Best of the Super Juniors. I think 1991, I want to say Jushin Liger, Pegasus Kid, Blue Dolphin.
I've got the DVD of it on my shelf right over there.
All right. Yeah. So like that was one of the first, and then I was just fell in love with Japanese wrestling. And then like I said on Turn a Page, that's what got me into lucha, because then I started seeing luchadors in New Japan, and I went, well, where are they from? So then we, but back then it was harder. Like you mentioned, you didn't just go online and go, hey, let me look at, Ray Phoenix. What is his match? Like back then you had to actually like hunt out throughout either message boards or the community postings in the dirt sheets, if you will. The other thing that you mentioned I like is, like I said, when I was in the business, it was a little longer, but it was like 2005 to 2015. And one of our big things on producing was DVDs. That's why I said it was the golden age, I think. And I know you did it on a grander scale, but every company worth its salt had DVDs, and you made a lot of money on those DVDs. Yeah, because people would buy them. And the one company I worked for, 2CW, all throughout the state of New York, we would do flyering and stuff, but since we went around to different towns, we had strongholds. When we were coming through, we were packing houses, but some people couldn't make it to the Binghamton show or the Watertown show or the Syracuse show or wherever. So they would buy the DVD. And like that is almost a loss for. And then people, the collectors, like I have a collection of them, obviously, because working there, but it's one of those things that it's nice to see as a fan. It's easy to get, but yeah, the monetization has to really, really be hard. Really be hard right now. Yeah. So let's talk about some wrestling. Let's talk about NXT. NXT had a big PLE, as that's what they call them these days, this past Sunday from the Apex, the UFC Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada. Actually, technically, it's Enterprise, Nevada, but it's still Vegas.
It's still Vegas.
Let's do a quick card rundown and give some thoughts on it. Of course, the opening contest was to crown the inaugural NXT Women's North American Champion. At 12 minutes and 24 seconds, Kalani Jordan would defeat Sol Rauka, Lash Legend, Phelan Henley, Jada Parker, and Michin to become your first ever NXT North American Champion. Next up, in the second match of the night for the NXT Tag Team Championships, your champions Nathan Frazier and Axiom would go up against the OC, Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson. This match got 11 minutes and 38 seconds at the end of the day, and still your NXT Tag Team Champions, Nathan Frazier and Axiom. Next up was the NXT Underground match, which got 10 minutes and 17 seconds. Lola Vice would defeat Shayna Baszler by referee stoppage, followed by the triple threat match for the NXT North American Championship, where your champion, Obafemi would defeat Wesley and Joe Coffey to be still NXT North American champion at 12 minutes and 3 seconds. And then the big one that the world was talking about, the NXT Women's Championship match, your champion Roxanne Perez taking on TNA Knockouts World Champion Jordynne Grace. Match got 13 minutes and 57 seconds. And at the end of the day, and you're still NXT Women's Champion Roxanne Perez. And in the main event of the show for the NXT Championship, Trick Williams would take on Ethan Page, making his debut to NXT. And at 12 minutes and 11 seconds, Trick Williams would be and still your NXT champion. So overall, I think it was a good show. There were some bumpy spots. NXT Underground proved once again why I say, unless it's Josh Barnett's blood sport, you probably should stay away from the MMA mixing with wrestling. Because for those of us who
like that match,
you did.
Yeah, well, I did.
The thing is, I've always looked at it like this: for people who watch MMA and then you watch wrestling try to do MMA, unless you're doing it a little bit on a shoot level, you can always pick out the spots. But you know what? If you're entertained by it, that's awesome, because honestly, I've heard mixed feelings. For me, I fall more on the side of like the MMA stuff kind of throws me off. But hey, I'm always game for what you like. What did you like about it in particular?
Okay. First off, yes, watching a Josh Barnett blood sport where guys are going out there and they're working, straight up strong style. You can't hold a candle to that. I think part of it probably was my expectations going in were just so low that I was more concerned that it was going to come off as just really, really poorly. Not by any, like you said, when you put people, look, Shayna's great. So I think that's probably what really helped carry the match, is that there are MMA fighters who make that transition to wrestling really well, and she's one of them. And then there are MMA fighters that, it don't make the transition very well. And so I definitely give her a lot of credit. And I thought that for everything about the way, I really liked the finish. I thought that, because I was questioning the whole time, like how they were going to do the finish. And I really liked the finish. And I do think that it's really important that for a match like that, you do the entire presentation with the ropes down and everything, because I think when you're trying to sell a shoot fight as a wrestling match in the middle of a normal wrestling ring, it gets a little bit into that like late WCW territory where it's like, this is a shoot, and like, but the rest of the show wasn't. And how does that work in my brain? And I thought overall that it was, I guess it just exceeded my expectations at least.
I will say this: I'm with you on the finish. I did like how the finish protected everybody. I thought that they did a very good job, because you could still say that Lola Vice kind of cheated to win by throwing her into the steps, and that's what allowed her to get the eventual knockdown rough stoppage. So you had that kind of. I thought that was a very good way to protect everybody. And I'll give it. Yeah, I agree with you for the most part. For a WWE produced kind of shoot-esque fight, we're using quotations, obviously. It definitely came off fine. With the two of them, the only thing that I kind of like, it was rough though, is that both of them have such an MMA experience. Obviously, Shayna at the top levels in UFC. Lola didn't quite make it to UFC, but she did still fight in PFL. So at the same point in juncture, I would have kind of almost liked them to kind of, it sounds bad, go into business for themselves a little bit. And they could have probably, I think if they let them just do that, they could have probably sold the match a little better, because I think that they could have drawn from that. But WWE obviously doesn't want people getting hurt. What
was the match, the recent AEW match with Malachi, and was it Kyle O'Reilly?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, like that match, I would say looked more like a shoot than this match. So I will give you, that.
Yeah. Well, do you remember, I mean, we're going old now. I think it was like 2010, 2011 when Kyle O'Reilly took on Adam Cole in the hybrid match. And that's where Adam Cole lost his front teeth.
Yes, now that you mention it.
Adam Cole lost his front teeth in a Ring of Honor match because they did. And that's, I get, once again, I get why you can't do shoot fighting. Pancrase is long gone. You know what I mean? The UWFI is long gone. And it doesn't need to come back. But I will say this, my favorite match of the night was Roxanne Perez and Jordynne Grace.
Same.
A lot of fun.
For a match that was overhyped in a lot of ways, because obviously the situation in such a small build, I thought the two of them did an amazing job. Of course, Jordynne Grace is amazing, and Roxanne Perez is the real deal. I think we all know that. I mean, I don't think she's in NXT because she doesn't get it. I think she's in NXT because they need star power when they go to the CW. Totally. and bringing in Jordan, I think that was a perfect gimmick.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a perfect time, and I want to see where this goes. Nick, what was your takeaways? What is your favorite takeaways from the show?
Yeah, I'd have to say Jordan Grace definitely stole the show for me. I was a little disappointed with the finish. Wanted to see that, see her go over, but you'll see where they go with the TNA aspect of it. Overall, the show was incredibly solid. The high production value looked really good in that arena.
I love the arena.
Yeah, it looked really nice. Looked really, really, really good camera shots and everything. So I loved that. And matches were good, and some good story development here. And what was interesting though, beyond the PLE was what happened on Tuesday, how they've kind of pivoted in a different direction from one night. And I thought that was very interesting too.
Yeah. I will say it was a little weird for me to see Ash by Elegance as the surprise from TNA, because I was like, well, she was already in NXT. So like, I would have liked to see somebody else from TNA, but that's me being a greedy wrestling fan. It has nothing to do with anything else than me being a greedy wrestling fan.
And plus, remember, the announcers go, wait, that's Dana. I mean,
oh yeah, oops, my bad. They had to slip a little bit, but you got to give them credit. They were on point about everything else. Ken, some of your thoughts from NXT?
Solid card. I mean, NXT is getting that takeover feel back to it. This one, I think a lot of pressure was on them to really go over the top with, but they gave us a very, very good card. I agree with you. I think Roxanne and Jordan was the match of the night. I think they really went out, told a great story, and I'd love to see Jordan come back or this feud continue. Obviously, the forbidden door is open for now, so might as well run with it.
Or as Jordan Grace says, the prohibited portal.
Yes.
Kevin, any other thoughts that you had about the NXT show from this past Sunday?
I did not get to see all of it, but I've become a big fan of Kehlani. I think she's got so much upside and potential. I was kind of surprised that the OC didn't win, which I was fine with. I thought that was a fun match, and I haven't seen the main event yet, but I am a big Ethan Page fan, so I'm hoping that it seems like they're strapping a rocket to him, and I'm glad to see that.
Yeah, we're all Ethan Page fans as well. I thought you did a great job in the main event. Trick is still figuring some things out, but I still think the upside on Trick Williams is amazing. He's athletic. He's got the things you can't really teach. He's got the charisma. He's got the cockiness. He's got the confidence, and his wrestling ability, it grows leaps and bounds every time we see him. So I'm not going to crap on him too much. I know there's some people who are like, oh, look how green he is. Listen, he still has those intangibles that nobody else has. So, and he wants to learn. He's getting better. So I can never judge. It's the same thing with Jade. Look at Jade Cargill. She has the intangibles. You can't teach those intangibles. Those intangibles you just have. And if you have them and you want to learn those, that's what makes you a successful wrestler, in my opinion. Because you can learn the actual sport as long as you want to put in the time, and both of them have. So I think that's unfair. I do want to touch what you were talking about on, of course, Tuesday real quick before we move on to Ricochet. And that, of course, was the whole Cody Rhodes and the former AEW guys. And, of course, everybody's claiming that was some kind of shot. I listen, it was a nice banter. What are you going to say when you have Shawn Spears, Ethan Page, Cody Rhodes? They're going to have their moment. And it was, and of course, Lexis King. Sorry, I almost forgot about Lexis King. I mean, listen, this is the day and age we live in. I mean, I'm surprised there was no response on the other page, but I mean, are you surprised? I mean, you did have somebody just talking about grinding on the boss's daughter not that long ago. At least it was classy. Some people were saying about the Cody Rhodes thing about, how he comes across. And I'm like, Cody Rhodes is a professional all day. That doesn't mean he's not going to take this opportunity to say something here and there, because obviously he's been very public without saying what it was. There was something personal that kept that wedge in between him and AEW. And that's why he returned to WWE. So there's obviously some part of him that, and when his wife speaks up on Twitter or X, you kind of go, there's something there, but at least he's professional enough not to talk about it. So it is what it is. I didn't think it was that bad. I don't know what your guys' take was on the whole. I don't know why that was the big news coming out instead of the 25-person battle royal, where literally he said that any locker room can be a part of it. So
I just think that everybody was just looking to, get the internet riled up again, because it's so easy to do. I mean, it was a fun moment because obviously there's been a lot of talent exchange, but I didn't look too much into it. It was just like, okay, this is gonna be something that everybody can make a meme of and keep it moving.
Absolutely. Nick, your thoughts?
Yeah, I just thought it was fun. Like, it was just a fun little quick segment, get all the guys together and just have a laugh real quick. I thought it was great.
Yeah, they could have the learning tree make fun of it on Wednesday, and I've been fine anyways. Kevin, did you have any thoughts? Did you see anything about that? Of course, it was all
I
over
did
the
not.
internet.
Well, so I have not seen this week's NXT yet, but of course I saw the meme, and that, I think exactly. I mean, even just with the way that they were pointing their fingers and everything, it was meant to be a meme. It was a moment. Listen, we live in 2024. People were going to be talking about this anyway, even if they didn't try to, make a meme out of it or give it that moment. So, I think in their minds, a lot of times it's just like, we might as well be driving the narrative. We might as well, be the one getting the clicks and the retweets I think it was what it was. It was a funny little tongue-in-cheek moment.
Yeah, I didn't think it wasn't as salacious as some other things that have been said or done, but that's all in fun. Once again, it is what it is. You're going to get that. And if you're Tony Khan in AEW, you got to be like, all right, that's cool, because at least they're acknowledging us.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to me, that's the whole thing. If you could have the industry leader acknowledge you at all on any level, I think that's kind of a win in your book, because it's one thing when you shoot up. It's another thing when they shoot down, because then that means they have to actually acknowledge you.
Right.
And I think that's what some people like get offended by, but it's like, no. It's actually a good thing that you're being acknowledged by the guy that sits on top. It's not always, if he doesn't ever acknowledge you and you're off in the corner somewhere, I think that's a little more worrisome for me.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? They needed a good bit of publicity, because obviously this week has been dominated by the talk of Ricochet, because it has been reported widely. Of course, Mike Johnson reported it, which I will give credit. If Mike Johnson says it, usually it's pretty on point.
Let me tell you something about Mike Johnson.
Here we go.
No, not uh-oh.
I was going to say, wait a minute, here we go.
Not uh-oh at all. I found out my MTV show was being canceled from Mike Johnson before I found out from MTV.
Wow.
So never question the
Mike
validity
Johnson?
of Mike Johnson's reporting. He gets the right information, the inside information, and he double checks the sources, and then he reports on it. So, there are very few voices that I would say I always go, if they're saying it, it must be fact. And Mike Johnson's definitely one of them.
Oh, I agree with you 100%, because that's what he does. He checks, he double checks. He never jumps the gun. You see guys jump the gun, and he'll wait until he has it confirmed. And that's due diligence. And it's not the only thing because famously he also reported ECW was going out of business before it did too. So he knew before the guys knew that ECW was going away. So it's kind of one of those things. That's where you got to go with. And when he reported that, basically Ricochet gave his notice. He said, hey, my contract coming up, I'm going to seek other employment. Now that doesn't mean he's leaving. I even pointed out likelihood, probably. That just means that he wants to seek other options, which obviously AEW will offer him a contract. Let's be honest. Let's be serious. Everybody's going to offer him a contract. TNA is going to offer him a contract. You never know. He might want to go the route of a Matt Cardona, or right now, Dolph Ziggler. I mean, yes, he's with TNA, but he's also doing a lot of stuff on the side, and Mustafa Ali as well. So like you have like this road that you can go to that's the indies, with doing some spot dates for some bigger companies. And you also have this road that you can go to with AEW. So my question to everybody, and we'll start with you, Kevin. Ricochet, what do you think that him giving his notice, where do you think he's going? What do you think his future holds?
A lot of people have asked me this question over the last few weeks.
Shocking.
When people ask me, what do I think is next for Ricochet? I say, I think Ricochet is going to get paid, because that is one of the best parts for the talent right now of having an AEW and having a WWE, where, we're no longer in this drought where there was literally only one company where you can generally make a living, right? I mean, because let's face it, if you're in TNA, you're still working another job or working wrestling, or there's not another company out there until AEW started where there legitimately you could make a good, decent living as a pro wrestler. And so, not everybody is going to be afforded these opportunities, but somebody on the level of Ricochet, it just, like you said, people have asked me, am I 100% sure he's going to AEW? Until he signs somewhere. I mean, listen, we've known WWE to throw a lot of money at talent that they want to keep. And it really aggravates me when wrestling fans act entitled to somebody going someplace or coming someplace and not thinking about their money and their family and how that's probably a little bit more important than, whether they're going to end up having the matches you want them to have. So I think it's a great time for Ricochet. I'm really excited for him. He definitely deserves to be happy wherever he goes. He is such an incredible talent. And, if I had to bet, yeah, sure. I'd bet on him heading to AEW, especially because it opens up the ability to go back to Japan and ability to work internationally. But listen, WWE has the resources to make the right offers to people when they want to. So, I wouldn't consider it 100% until the paper's signed.
Well, that's what I'm with you. He's going to get the bag, and as a greedy wrestling fan, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to be happy wherever he lands. Because let's be honest, when you get that kind of bag, you're going to be used.
Mm-hmm.
You don't pay all that money and go, oh yeah, by the way, you just get to sit home now. And for me, AEW, it can get top heavy at times, but here's the thing: he can go to New Japan, he can go to CMLL. Being there, he can actually travel to some of these partner programs and do that style. In WWE, we're seeing them partner up with people too, so you never know. You could also have some openings there because obviously, we're not going to dive too deep into it, but this Sunday, Pro Wrestling Noah and WWE have an announcement, and they've already teased that there's a wrestler that's making the announcement. So somebody from WWE is going to be making an appearance for Pro Wrestling Noah soon. Obviously, Shinsuke Nakamura made an appearance for them against the Great Muta in one of his final matches, and now we're going to get another talent, which we'll find out on Sunday. So there's some partnerships and going on. We know the Io Sky is going to Marigold. That was just announced this week as well. So there's a lot of things going on. It's a new WWE, if you will, in the Triple H era. But with that being said, WWE could have looked how the outpouring that they've gotten, kind of like what happened with Cody Rhodes in WrestleMania. Remember, it's being widely reported by even WWE that the plan was The Rock and Roman. Mm-hmm. And then when the crowds poo-pooed on it, they went, never mind, we're going back to Cody Rhodes. So maybe this got them to go, wait a minute, maybe there's more to Ricochet. Maybe we could give him more money. And they might throw the AEW might offer a big number and WWE might go, hey, here's the money. And you never know, he resigns. I'm with you, Kevin. I think it's more likely he's going to go to AEW. However, that's good for him. He's still 35. He signs a deal. You never know. He could be back or he could be on top of the world elsewhere. And I think as a wrestling fan, that's great. Nick, where do you think Ricochet is going to end up?
The banner is already generated. He's going to AEW. That's my take.
Okay.
That's my bold prediction.
I think my favorite banner that I saw, I don't know if you guys saw this one the other day, but I saw one that said Rick Crochet as his new name. That was fantastic.
That's amazing.
That is great. Go ahead, Ken.
WWE. I think what he's going to do, kind of echo what Kevin was saying, what you were saying too, Rich. I think what he's going to do is let his contract run out, and I think he's going to hear what Tony Khan and anybody else is going to offer him. And then I think he's going to go back to Nick Khan, Triple H, the powers that be, and I think he's going to say, like, here's what they're offering. What can you do? You have one last chance. And I think the reaction that he's getting online right now is echoing a lot of the Sami Zayn push that we saw, before WrestleMania with him, and the Bloodline storyline. And much like you said with Cody Rhodes and what happened at WrestleMania, I think the powers that be at WWE are listening more to the fans' reaction. And I think that this might have been a little bit of an eye-opening moment. And I think for him, ultimately, like Kevin said, he's going to get paid. So it just depends on what he wants to do. But how wild would this be if he is the wrestler at Noah on Sunday?
It'd be interesting. I don't know if they make the decision that quick, but you never know. It'd be interesting because I don't believe, by his own admittance, I don't believe his contract is up until July. So for him to go out and look, unless they agree to let him go out and receive contract offers early, which they may, you never know. It's a different age. I like how Kevin put it. This is now an age where you have to negotiate. It's like free agency in any other sport.
Yeah,
contracted. You can't poach contracted workers. However, if the company allows you to go take an offer, which sometimes is smart. You see it in sports as well. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's smart. So then you know where the market lies on him, because then if it comes, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, so yeah, where the market lies. So therefore, if that's like, hey, that's too rich for my blood, then you're out. Or you can go, hey, I can meet that or beat that.
I was just going to say, as I've been watching death of WCW or who killed WCW on Vice. I mean, that's what happened with Brett. And, he was still in contract. They told him, hey, go see if you can get, this big money so we can get you out of your contract. It's a little bit different, obviously, here because his contract's about to be up. But no, and I can tell you that both sides, WWE and AEW, do take the not talking officially to somebody before their contract is up very seriously these days because nobody wants to be getting sued for contract tampering.
Well, I was going to say, Tony Khan, very smartly, somebody asked him about Ricochet, and he said, I'm not going to talk about anybody who's under contract somewhere else. Perfect. It was one of those moments where sometimes Tony goes off the cuff and does something emotionally and just, says something, and we've had those in the past. I looked at this and was like, Tony, I'm so proud of you that you went and said, hey, I'm not saying nothing. Because what you're right. You could go in and take somebody for tampering. I mean, MLW just got $20 million from WWE. Because of alleged and we can only say alleged because they took a settlement. But obviously there's a reason why they were willing to give up $20 million. You know what I mean? It's so you have to go through that. Real quick, I want to just touch on some stuff that happened this past weekend in New Japan and what's coming up. So this past weekend, NJPW held their Dominion, which is one of their largest outside of Wrestle Kingdom. It's like their second or third, depending upon who you talk to, event of the year. And of course, coming out of that, we had Jon Moxley's successful title defense. And we now know that at Forbidden Door, it will be Jon Moxley defending the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship against former champion Tetsuya Naito. That's going to be an amazing, amazing match. But before we get there, this upcoming weekend, Saturday to be specific, there is the big All Together show brought to you by United Japan Wrestling, which is basically New Japan Pro Wrestling Noah, and All Japan Pro Wrestling. And the main event of that show, as you see, is Jake Lee taking on Tetsuya Naito. So Naito has a big challenge coming up before his dance on the 30th with Jon Moxley. My question to the room is, are you excited to see the rematch of Moxley versus Naito at Forbidden Door? We'll start with you, Ken.
Yes. I think it has to make some sense. I mean, obviously with AEW doing Forbidden Door, and there's such an influx of talent coming in from New Japan, you want to make a marquee name. This makes a lot of sense for New Japan storylines. I'm all here for it. I'm hoping Naito wins, but we'll have to wait and see.
Nick, your thoughts?
100%. Just to echo Ken, yes, this is a match that on a card that was kind of suspect at some points for the actual Forbidden Door aspect of it. This is perfect.
All right, Kevin, have you been paying any attention? I mean, I know Forbidden Door is coming up. You might be keeping your eye on that.
I mean, I'm always two, I think, of my favorite performers, who constantly deliver great matches, and then you're going to give me, them together again. I'm all in. Yeah. Like, I find myself often thinking, I'm so busy, I'm not going to buy the AEW pay-per-view. And like 9 times out of 10, I end up buying it and watching it and loving it, even if I can't watch it all in one sitting. And so, no, I'm very in on Forbidden Door across the board. But I was very excited to see this match get added.
I will say this though: you are a little luckier being on the West Coast because it's a little earlier. Here on the East Coast, watching AEW pay-per-views, they don't end until like 12:30.
Yeah,
we still order them. Still order them.
Yeah.
I'm going to say this. I don't think that there has been an AEW pay-per-view in recent memory, or possibly in company's history, that I was like, man, we wasted $50 on. There's some that were better than others, but I don't think that there was anywhere I was literally vehemently mad that I paid $50.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I was going to say,
I don't think that there was any that we've been mad about. There's some that were better than others. Don't get me wrong. Revolution this past year was amazing.
Oh yeah, Revolution was. I was just thinking the exploding barbed wire match. I know we were very mad about that.
The pay-per-view was good,
but the whole pay-per-view, but I just remember that was just like, oh.
I think the closest one for me would be All Out last year because they did All In and All Out back to back.
Yeah, back to back. That was a little rough. That was.
I skipped that one personally.
Yeah, it was a little rough this year. Thankfully, they're spacing it a little bit, a couple weeks. I do want to talk about one more PLE before we go into the close, because listen, TNA wrestling is back in a big bad way. They are working with WWE, as we know, and they have one of their premium live events coming up, because if you have TNA Plus, this event is included. If not, I do believe this carries like a $15 fee if you just want to get it via standalone over on Triller TV. And that, of course, is Total Nonstop Action presents Against All Odds from Cicero, Illinois at the Cicero Stadium. The show is sold out, by the way. that is pretty awesome for TNA, who's not had a lot of sellout performances, sold out this show. And here's the card that they have down. I'm going to run through it. The Callahan Death Machine, Sammy Callahan taking on that new look Jonathan Gresham.
Mm-hmm.
Then also we'll get Eric Young and Josh Alexander taking on some of our favorites, ABC, Ace Austin and Chris Bay. Steve Macklin and Mike Santana will take on the Rascals, Trey Miguel and Zachary Wentz. Mustafa Ali will be defending the TNA X Division Championship against Trent Seven. The System, Brian Myers and Eddie Edwards, will be defending the TNA World Tag Team Championships against the Nemeth brothers, Nick and Ryan Nemeth. Moose will be taking on Broken Matt Hardy for the TNA World Championship. And for the TNA Knockouts World Championship, Jordan Grace will be defending that title in an open challenge. So, knowing that the prohibited portal or forbidden door is open, let the speculation begin. So I'm just going to say it. The big news out of this, who do you think is going to challenge Jordan Grace for the Knockouts Women's Championship, starting with you, Nick?
I don't even know. Geez, someone from the main roster. Someone from the main roster, not NXT.
Maybe. All right, Ken, thoughts?
Natalya.
I like that pick.
Mm.
I think Natalya would be awesome to see in this match.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say it, and this is a fear that's not bad. It's nothing about the young lady's work. Tatum Paxley, I think they kind of set up a little bit at the NXT PLE. So it could be her, and it's not against her at all. It's just that she's still young. And I think that this would be a perfect spot to put somebody, especially this partnership, like a Natalya. And I understand some people will be like, well, Natalya's been around for a while, but that's why she's good in the ring. Jordan Grace is good in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they could have a banger. So I'm hoping it's somebody like Natalya, and I'm going to say Natalya for that. Kevin, do you have a pick that you think might happen here at Against the
I
Odd?
don't, but I would definitely, I'm all on board with this Natalya idea. I think that, I got on one hand, you kind of, if you'd want it to be someone that you knew the crowd was going to pop for. And, I think if you're bringing somebody straight from NXT that doesn't have any main roster exposure, it might be kind of a colder reception. I think, somebody from the main roster, like you said, whether or not the person's going to win the title, I don't think is the question, but you just want to have the best match possible. And I think, Natalya versus Jordan Grace would be a heck of a match to watch. I think when Natalya gets in those situations, she's extra motivated. I'm here for that.
I was kind of hoping last week that they would give the NXT championship to Jordan Grace. So then we could have Roxanne come over to TNA and then take the TNA championship. And then you get the rubber match. But obviously they have something else cooking. And hopefully that is something to do with somebody main roster. Now, if they might blow the doors off the place if they pick like a major star. And I'm not saying that Natalya is not a major star, but could you imagine a Bianca Belair in that shot?
Mm-hmm.
Could you imagine like somebody that we're all like, whoa, him, huh? They sent that person? It gets a little hairy-carry then because technically does that person then have to win? You know what I mean? Like it's like Bianca Belair versus Jordan Grace. Love Jordan Grace. I know WWE's high up on her, and that's probably why they're looking to do some more work with her. But do you let her defeat Bianca Belair?
What if it's the biggest swerve of all and we're not expecting it? Somebody is due back from injury and we've seen her working out and she looks like she's ahead of schedule.
Oh, Charlotte Flair.
What if it's Charlotte Flair?
Once again, though, you run into the same question as she beats the champ.
I mean, unless there's some kind of shenanigans, but still.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, that one could tie in with Ash by Elegance, though.
Yeah.
Because remember, she was Charlotte's sidekick for a while.
Mm-hmm.
That could be interesting. There's so much. This is the fun part about wrestling right now, I think, with the forbidden doors, is that you never know. It could literally be numerous people, and I think we're all going to be happy no matter what, for the most part. I mean, I guess there's some people I'd be like,
it's a good card. It's a solid card right there.
Oh, listen, this TNA show alone is worth the price of admission.
Mm-hmm.
This is, once again, this is one of their premium live events because, as Tommy Dreamer's pointed out and Busted Open, they do PLEs and pay-per-views. So the PLEs are a little cheaper. And if you have TNA Plus, then you get them included in the fee. I think there's only 4 pay-per-views a year from them that are the higher price, which is like $35. But these are all like $10, $15 if you don't have TNA Plus. And I've never been, and honestly, TNA shows, I've never been really disappointed in any of them either. There was a streak where Bound for Glory was kind of rough for some reason. Everything else would be a banger and then Bound for Glory. But honestly, TNA has been firing on all cylinders, in my opinion, lately.
Agreed.
So you got a lot of action going on as pro wrestling fans. And of course, the big thing going down is Clash at the Castle. And I would be remiss if we didn't bring this up. We're not talking Clash at the Castle because guess what? Tomorrow night, Friday, right around 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Nerd Initiative YouTube channel, check out the Clash at the Castle pre-show extravaganza. That's right. We will be breaking down the entire card for Clash at the Castle. So you're going to want to tune into that and make sure you're signed up. But that's going to bring us into the end of the show. And because you are our guest, Kevin, one more time, please tell the fine folks how to get a hold of you, how to check out Masked Republic, and of course, Luchaverse Catalyst.
All right. Well, so we make it easy. It's at Masked Republic on pretty much all social media. But Masked Republic Comics also is its own thing now. So maskredrepubliccomics.com, at Masked Republic Comics on Instagram and Facebook, at Masked Rep Comics on Twitter because of the or X because of the characters. But maskredrepubliccomics.com has all the information, including we'll link you directly to the massive site because we know that wrestling fans don't necessarily have a local comic book shop that they go frequent, don't have a pull list. There are certain covers that are available for home delivery via online ordering from the massive website. So check that out. There's some really cool options on there. And we appreciate the support. And this is, this is the catalyst. This is the beginning. So this is a great place to jump in and join us for this ride that we're going to go on. And we hope you pick it up. Either order it at your comic book shop by Monday, the 17th, or grab it online from Massive before it comes out on July 17th. And if you're going to Comic-Con, we'll be there, and we'll have some announcements coming soon about that.
San Diego or New York?
Sorry,
both.
Both, but we're starting with San Diego.
Well, we will definitely be at New York, so we'll have to hook up there for sure.
Yeah, we're locked and loaded
Awesome.
for New York.
Yeah.
Great.
Of course, Nick, tell the fine folks how to get a hold of you if you want to talk Pokemon or pro wrestling.
Listen, if you guys want to talk some Pokemon, just click that QR code right there. You can follow me on Instagram, but I'm also here every Thursday night with these guys.
Awesome. Ken, kind of keep it brief, but I know you have to plug an interview that we did on Tuesday as well, but how do they get a hold of you first?
Why don't I just go right to the interview? Because you know what, when you go there, you can click on all the links. Because this past week, we had a fantastic interview with Diego Valenzuela, who is the mastermind behind the Luchaverse, along with Kevin. It's a fantastic interview. And if you are not sold on picking up the Luchaverse Catalyst event by hearing this interview with Kevin and hearing the interviews with Diego, I want you to go to your doctors and I want you to get your pulse checked. Because seriously, as a comic fan, when I was seeing the preview for this, I was sitting there going like, okay, this is going to be something you want to check out. You want to get on board with early because word of mouth is going to spread about this. And you don't want to be that person who was sitting there sleeping on this, did not want to get involved because he thought, oh, it's just going to be wrestling, blah, blah, blah. It's so much more than that. And you really want to make sure you order at your comic shops by June 17th. And you want to make sure you go online and make sure you get a copy. So you should go get two just to make sure you're covered. Because seriously, if you're missing out on this, you're going to be hearing about it. And I'm just trying to avoid what is going to happen if you hear about it, because the jealousy is going to be, very, very compelling. Because honestly, this is an investment that you want to make if you're a comic book fan. And if you know somebody that wants to get into comics, this is so reader friendly that it's inviting you to come in. And if there's something that they're into more than others, like horror, action, sci-fi, there's literally something for everybody. So like I say, make sure to go over to the Turn the Page interview with Diego. Go check that out. The links are all there to go sign up for it. And we also have the comic shop locator in there as well. So there's no way, and I mean no way, you can skip ordering this. We make it that easy for you folks. I'm stressing this. Unclick. And then last but certainly not least, because I got to hurry up with the intros, every Wednesday, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, the hardest working review crew in all of comics, no question about it, at me if you think otherwise, is dropping reviews every Wednesday starting at 9 a.m. every 15 minutes until we're done. This past week, over 25 reviews, and that's been the streak going, giving you the best of the best from Marvel, DC, and all the indies. If we're not talking about it, seriously, you need to go check out the list and see what you're picking up, because we are giving you all of the books that you need to have as a collector.
Absolutely. Of course, every Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here, we have Wrestling Night Live. If you want to get a hold of me, go to 3fnpodcast.com. QR code's right there. There's all the information. It'll get you to my social medias and also to check out 3FN Podcast, adult humor movie review podcast. This past week, we reviewed Bad Boys, Ride or Die. That's right. They made another Bad Boys film. How did we like it? Got to listen to find out. Then, of course, nerdinitiative.com, your home of pop culture positivity. If your fandom isn't there, it will be there by the end of 2024. Join the revolution. Check out the hardest working creators, and we're adding more each and every week and as we grow. So we want to make sure you're checking out nerdinitiative.com. And because I'm contractually obligated to bring it up, Nerd Initiative merchandise. That's right. You can go to that QR code, or you can get there from nerdinitiative.com. Support the brand. There's NI Wrestling and Wrestling Night Live stuff, including a really cool hoodie that has the right down the middle slogan on it. So you might want to pick that one up. Support the brand, help us out. But like I said, contractually obligated by the bosses. But last but certainly not least, I want to make sure you guys know to go to YouTube, go smash the subscribe button, click the bell icon for notifications, and add that, hit that tap that thumbs up. It's getting late here. And so let the fan folks at Nerd Initiative know you want more pro wrestling content. And of course, we have the preview show, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Friday for Clash at the Castle going down in Glasgow, Scotland. So with that being said, thank you once again, Kevin, for joining us.
Thank you so much.
We'll obviously keep in touch and hopefully have you back to talk some more pro wrestling, because I'd love to talk to you about a lot of the stuff that you've done, because like I said, I'm not even putting you, I think I'm underselling you when I said you've literally done pretty much everything you could
other than wrestle, except for one time.
Yeah, exactly.
But other than wrestle.
yeah. Other than that, everything you can do in the pro wrestling business in 30 plus years. So it's pretty impressive. So I can't wait to talk to you again. Of course, can't wait to talk to Diego again and everybody, because man, this book and this comic book is just amazing. But just seeing the other things at Master Republic, I mean, I opened up and saw the opening page and saw Blue Demon and Santo versus Frankenstein poster, and I went, oh, this is great. And I just I instantly just impressed. So go, guys, check that out. Everybody listening at home, please check it out. But for myself, for Nick, for Ken, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and most importantly, later, wrestling fans.